Last time on Line by Line, we saw the end of the flood. We saw Noah and his family, his wife, his children, his children's wives, getting on a boat with a bunch of animals, clean and unclean. Then we had a large flood. The flood ended. The land began to dry up. The boat that they were on perched on a mountain, the mountain of Arad. Then time passed. The land dried out. He sent forth birds to see if it was rejuvenated to the point of survival. And at last it had become. Then Noah left the boat, created a burnt sacrifice to the Lord, and here we are today. Genesis 9:1. And God pronounced a blessing upon Noah and his sons and said to them, Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. That's kind of the commandment that we get as humanoid life forms, to spread forth and populate the world. The world is one that was created to be populated, and God gave the orders to Noah and his sons to do that. And here we are today. I don't know how many billion of people there are, but there's definitely a lot more than what we started with here in Genesis. Genesis 9:2. And the fear that you have, and the dread and terror of you shall be upon every beast of the land, every bird of the air, and all that creepeth upon the ground, and upon all the flesh of the sea. They are delivered into your hands. This is where man gets the strength, the ability to have total domination of the planet, right? When it comes to conflict with animals, an Apache helicopter can slay an infinite amount of lions, tigers, and bears. Oh my! So, I mean, even before that, right? The bow, the spear, all the tools that people have used over the centuries have allowed for total domination, as well as fishing, the whaling industry. You think about it, they were killing giant whales that are tremendously vast in size with little pointy sticks. So the strength of ingenuity and the application of tools when in the hands of humans is tremendous. The other aspects too, right? Like humans, because we possess the ability to sweat, it's actually theoretically possible for humans to like outrun, I think, every animal there is in existence. It's like, yeah, we can't run as fast as a cheetah, but if we turn that into an endurance race, they don't stand a chance. There's runs in Europe, I believe, where it's like, people race against horses and stuff, and there have been years where people have beat them. And I think if you were like in peak physical condition, the strength of being a person is quite immense. Something that cannot be overestimated, underestimated, estimated in an extreme of one or the other, whichever one makes more sense, right? Like, it's just crazy what people can do, and the tools that we've made, and just like where we are today, right? Like, a cheetah's not gonna beat a Kawasaki Ninja. Kawasaki Ninja? Is it a Ninja or is it a Hayabusa? The motorcycle that goes room room. Oh, or is that a Mazda? Genesis 9:3. Every moving thing that lives shall be food for you, and I have given you the green vegetables and plants. I give you everything. Everything is up for grabs. People can eat whatever they want. Before the flood, people were strictly vegetarians, and I kind of believe too that the animals were at that juncture in time as well, right? That they didn't need to eat the flesh of other animals to survive. They could have been vegetarians. The mammoths could have been hanging out in forests. Like, if you were like, oh, the mammoths, they're Arctic animals. It's like, well, you go look at the jungles today, you see all these really hairy monkeys, and that's like, well, maybe long hair was good in the forest. It gave you protection. So, I don't know. I don't want to build a big case on that because it could very well be wrong, but, they ate the vegetables and plant matter. I mean, elephants nowadays eat plant matter. I guess that's not really any different. Don't know what saber-toothed tigers were doing. Maybe they're just having a good old time. So yeah, we can eat all this different stuff, and we're going to need to, because a lot of the nutritional elements of plants just aren't adequate anymore. You look at like some of these like really hardcore, super duper vegetarians. A lot of the times they need nutrient supplements to get all the stuff that they're missing. Like with the way that the food is currently being produced, we only eat from like several different kinds of plants, so a lot of the nutritional value is gone. Whereas in the classical hunter sense, people would have been eating from hundreds of different kinds, so they probably had a much more diverse amount of nutrients. And that's after the flood, so who knows what it was like pre-flood. I mean, people were living to like 1,000 years, so I mean, they were probably eating some good old sardines, spinach, and cauliflower back then was probably a lot better than it is today. Even if you have cheese sauce. Genesis 9:4. But you shall not eat of the flesh with the life of it, which is its blood. So there we go. You're not supposed to drink the blood. There's a lot of different instances where that can be problematic and cause health conditions, like drinking raw pork blood. I think you could get a whole bunch of parasites, and your organs would just explode and you would die. But there's a lot of stuff that way. And then you get into like the conspiracy stuff of like the androchrome and the people that like beat the dogs before they eat them to get the adrenaline in the blood. So then you drink the blood and you get like high off the adrenaline in the blood, and a bunch of sick, crazy stuff like that. That I don't know why I'm including that here, but Genesis 9:5. And surely for your lifeblood I will require an accounting. From every beast I will require it, and from every man who spills another blood I will require reckoning. Here's where we got the eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Although that usually comes a little bit later when we get to Leviticus, but there is kind of a preamble to that in the sense that, don't murder each other, or, there will be a required reckoning. And this is usually like a family thing. In the Genesis earlier on, right, we had the murder of Cain and Abel, then we had Cain's great, I don't know how many greats it is, grandson or whatever, 77-fold, and just his little nonsense there. He's just almost like a challenge, right? Throwing down the banner of valor and just declaring himself an enemy. So there will be, like the families of people that are murdered. It's like they want the vengeance. So that's kind of what we got going on here. And the other aspect of this is that, this is required of God, right? So if you murder someone, even if it's like you're acquitted in a court of law or whatever it is, but that doesn't, exonerate you from the wrath of God. I don't know where this is going, but don't kill people. God will judge you for it, and he will require a reckoning. So we'll see. And this is just kind of setting stuff up for down the line, right? I mean, a lot of stuff kind of changes in the era of grace and forgiveness, but for here, he's just kind of setting a precedent that, there will be consequences. Genesis 9:6. Whoever sheds a man's blood, by man shall his blood be shed, for the image of God he had made. So it's like, well, why, is in the reckoning? Because it's, killing something in the image of God. So there's, not good. Don't kill. Don't murder. Genesis 9:7. And you be fruitful and multiply, bring forth abundantly on the earth and multiply on it. Here we go. There's the command to kind of fill the planet. Genesis 9:8. Then God spoke to Noah and his sons with him, saying, 9:9. Behold, I establish my covenant or pledge with you and your descendants after you. So it's not just Noah and his sons, it's everyone that's descended out of them, which is everybody here today, because God wiped everything out. So we're all, Noah is our great grandpa. Grandpa Noah. And maybe one of his sons too. Well, more likely one of his sons. I guess he, probably had kids after those ones or whatever. Kids after the ark, because he did live for quite a while after. So he might not necessarily be a descendant of one of Noah's sons that was on the ark, but you could still be a descendant of Noah's sons. Right? Right? Yeah. 9:10. And with every living creature that is with you, whether the birds, the livestock, or the wild beast of the earth along with you, as many as come out of the ark, every animal on the earth. Well, there we go. They're just going to multiply, and the animals are going to multiply. So we're going to have a big, full planet filled with lots of animals. Genesis 9:11. I will establish my covenant or pledge with you. Never again shall all flesh be cut off by waters of a flood. Neither shall there ever be a flood to destroy the earth and make it corrupt. That's interesting. So he's not going to wipe everybody out with a flood again, so you can check that off the list of things. But that doesn't mean that there won't be localized floods like that occur after like a hurricane or flash. What do you call that when all the snow melts really fast? Flash flood? Flash flood? I guess it is. Maybe that's what we call it. Right? So those are localized floods. So people are allowed to die in those, but it's not a global flood that corrupts the world, which is kind of crazy because, it's not our natural state to think of the world as just being corrupted, but it definitely is. Because it was a lot better beforehand, and this is just kind of the new normal. Our new normal is the corrupted state of the world. Genesis 9:12, and God said, "This is the token of my covenant, a solemn pledge, which I am making between me and you and every living creature that is with you for future generations." 9:13, I set my rainbow, in the cloud, and it shall be a token or a sign or covenant or a solemn pledge between me and the earth. So the rainbow is a symbol that there will not be judgment. And that's why it has been repurposed today by a certain group of people. It's a sign of no judging. So make of that what you will. We're not going to go any further than that. Genesis 9:14, and it shall be that when I bring clouds over the earth, and the rainbow is seen in the clouds. Genesis 9:15, I will earnestly remember my covenant or solemn pledge, which is between me and you and every living creature of all flesh, and the waters will no more be a flood to destroy or make all flesh corrupt. He's just really doubling down on that. This is extra emphasis. It's not that it's just repeating itself for the sake of repeating itself. This is double emphasis. That God is not going to let that happen again. He's not going to wipe everything out with a giant flood to destroy everything. Of course, it's written in such a way that, maybe some other means will be used next time. Genesis 9:16, when the rainbow is in the clouds, I look upon it. I will earnestly remember the everlasting covenant or pledge between God and every living creature of all flesh that is upon the earth. Well, there we go. Genesis 9:17, and God said to Noah, this rainbow is the token or sign of my covenant or solemn pledge which I have established between me and all flesh of the earth. That is like half the chapter right there. He is not going to do it. He's not going to do it. He's not going to do it. He's not going to flood the whole world. He's not going to destroy all flesh. He's not going to so he's saying that, and he's making a pledge. And, when God makes a pledge, that's one of the things that God can't do. God can't lie. So when he, makes like an oath or a vow, you can really take that one to the bank and cash it, because that's not going to happen again, right? Because if he was a liar, he wouldn't be holy. So that's just how that works. So because he's triple emphasized this, maybe it was quadruple. He emphasized it multiple times because it was probably like, I'm sure Noah and his boys, they were probably getting PTSD from just like the amount of rain, and everyone that they ever knew and the whole world that they knew beforehand was all destroyed. Like, there'd be a little bit of PTSD. They probably wake up in the middle of the night, especially if it was like raining. They get a little bit of a gentle rain. They'd be like, ah! Just a little bit of a panic ensues, right? They get the PTSD, the shell shock. In World War I, it was like the sounds of the artillery. In World War II, it was, or was it the machine guns? Machine guns, the artillery, just set people off. In the Vietnam War, there was different types of shell shock, and People just getting all, messed up because of it. And I bet you this war in Ukraine that's going on right now, people are going to hear mosquitoes go by and it's going to sound like drones, and they're going to wake up and just lose their mind because of the PTSD. And I'm sure Noah and his boys, seeing all flesh destroyed, the whole world destroyed, a little bit of rain is, it might set them off. And, but God's got to triple down on this, quadruple down with the emphasis. He's not going to destroy everything, so they can hear the rain come. They can hear it bounce off the. Who knows what their houses would have been made out of? I mean, whether they were like leaf roofs or like what's that British thing with like the it's like that it's like straw or something, like a straw thatched roof. Hear the rain bouncing off of that, getting a little bit of the PTSD, but they can remember that, God said he's not going to destroy them, so they're able to go back to bed, sleep the night away, because they saw untold horrors of the whole world being destroyed. Genesis 9:18, the sons of Noah who went forth from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. Canaan was born later. The Canaan is kind of a big deal later on. A lot of these names, it's like, especially with these genealogies in Genesis, they kind of set up locations and things because, when God talks about locations, he can't really be like, well, that part of West Germany there where this and that, because the names of places change all the time depending on who is the empire in control. So usually when God is talking about a location, it'll be like, well, Noah's son went here and his, grandson went to that spot. So we're just going to call that after him from then on. And that's how a lot of these like biblical prophecies go down. It's like, well, try to figure out, which one of Noah's children or whatever settled in that area. Then you can kind of figure out, well, that's where that's going to happen. Well, that's in where Russia is now, or China, or the Euphrates, or well, I guess the Euphrates is a river, so it kind of keeps its name. But typically with empires and stuff, right? Because they change all the time. I mean, you look at a map of history. You look at a map of like Europe. Every year, go back 1 year and look at it for like the last 1,000 years, and look at all the different empires and all the different boundaries and whatnot, and it's just kind of crazy all over the place, right? And especially like more so like World War I, World War II, and just like how the countries changed and how big was Hungary, and Hungary merging with Germany, and then you got the First Reich going on before the Holy Roman Empire, and what was Alexander up to back in the day, it just goes all over the place. So that's kind of what's going on there, and that's why the genealogies and everything in Genesis is so important for understanding the locations, for understanding prophecy later on, and just kind of understanding where everything is going about, because empires and civilizations are kind of the scope of what many of the books talk about, different kingdoms and principalities. So it's interesting. Genesis 9:19. There are 3 sons of Noah, and from them the whole earth was overspread and stocked with inhabitants. So maybe Noah didn't have any more sons after, and they were just all descendants of Noah, or his 3 sons. Genesis 9:20. I guess he was an old man. I don't know. We'll see. Genesis 9:20. And Noah began to cultivate the ground, and he planted a vineyard. There we go. Oh man, we're getting into a crazy story here. Genesis 9:21. And he drank from the wine and became drunk, and he was uncovered and lay naked in his tent. Genesis 9:22. And Ham, the father of Canaan, glanced at him and saw the nakedness of his father, and told his 2 brothers outside. Genesis 9:23. So Shem and Japheth took a garment and laid it upon the shoulder of both, and walked backwards to cover the nakedness of their father. And their faces were backwards, and they did not see their father's nakedness. So what do we got going on here? We got one brother like, hey, check it out, our dad's naked, yeah. And maybe he's poking fun at him and some sort of despicable thing. It's like, rather than, being concerned and, covering him up or whatever, he's like all boasting to his brothers and making a big scene, making a big event out of this. Just kind of a despicable thing to do. It's like, when you see, a loved one, and in their worst time, you don't go telling other people about it. You don't go make a big deal about it. You don't try to expose their weakness to other people. That is just the lowest form of scum. And then we got these two other sons who are, much better. That, they don't want to see what, the one's talking about. They just want to cover the nakedness, let it be what it is, let them sleep it off. You don't need to expose your, dad's nakedness and just this nasty thing disgusting. Disgusting. Who knows? Like, just no respect. Just no respect for his dad. Genesis 9:24, when Noah awoke from his wine and he knew the thing which his youngest has done to him. Maybe there was some sort of prank as well. Maybe it's like, drawn his face with a permanent marker, metaphorically, some sort of other thing. Because he knew something was done to him. It could be like, he was like one of those like half sleeps, and maybe his son did some craziness there. Ham. Who knows what Ham did? Ham's not a very friendly name. Genesis 9:25, he exclaimed, "Cursed be Canaan." So he curses Ham's grandson, or Ham's son, his grandson. 9:25, he exclaimed, "Cursed be Canaan. He shall be the servant of servants to his brethren." So, whatever he did, Ham did there, was not good. Right? I mean, for there to be a curse proclaimed, it's, maybe there was some tomfoolery going on there, but just not good. Obviously something more happened here, and you got to kind of see between the lines to figure it out. He's not just saying, "Oh, look at that, Dad's naked." There's something more to this than that. Whatever it is, we can just kind of speculate at, but it was enough for him to curse Ham's son, which is probably his like prime son. Maybe it's like his firstborn or something, right? So he's just cursing him, and this is like a multi-generational curse. So that's pretty severe. 9:26, he also said, "Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and blessed be the Lord, the God be Shem. Blessed by the Lord, my God be Shem, and let Canaan be his servant." So he wants to bless Shem and make Canaan the servant of Shem. 9:27, "May God enlarge Japheth and let him dwell in the tents of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant." So there we go. He's bringing the two up and putting the one down. And Genesis 9:28, and Noah lived after the flood 350 years. 9:29, all the days of Noah were 950 years, and he died. So 350 years, so he would have got to see just how much worse the New World was after the flood. And he lived a really long time. All that time that he spent in the pre-flood condition obviously had some degree of an enhancement, and he enjoyed a greater degree of longevity. And we're going to start seeing from here on that the life expectancy of people, the lifespan of people, and the expected lifespan is much shorter. And that kind of changes a whole lot of stuff. So, till next time, we'll come back to this when we check out Genesis 10. Well, looking at Genesis 10, I might as well throw that in here. This is just one of those long genealogies, as I was explaining beforehand. But they're important to be here, but when you read over them in a scratch pass, it's questionable. Although what you can definitely gain from this is that do not pronounce the names in the same way I do, for I am likely pronouncing them wrong, and not wrong by a little bit, but by a significant margin. So let us go forth and enter into this genealogy. Genesis 10:1. This is the history of the generations, or descendants, of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. The sons born to them after the flood were, Genesis 10:2. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, and Tirias. The sons of Gomer were Ashkenazin, Riphath, and Tomah. Genesis 10:4, the sons of Javan, Elishan, Tarshish, Kittim, and Doginamin. That was definitely Dodinama, Dodimanain Dabandi Bandosan. Something like that. Genesis 10:5. From these coastal land peoples spread, there are the sons of Japheth in their lands, each with their own language by their families within their nations. Genesis 10:6, the sons of Ham, Cush, Egypt, Mizraham, Put, and Canaan. Genesis 10:7, the sons of Cush, Seba, Halivan, Sabach, Ramachan, and Sabachtak. And the sons of Raman, Sheban, and Dihanden. Genesis 10:8. Cush became the father of Nimrod. He was the first to be a mighty man on the earth. Well, there we go. So after the flood, our first mighty man is Nimrod. Well, we usually do not use Nimrod in that sense as being a mighty man, but that's kind of clarified here in Genesis 10:9. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it is said, like Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. When it's talking about him being a mighty hunter, this might not be a mighty hunter of animals, although he probably enjoyed it, doing the old Theodore Roosevelt style. Had to slay every beast that there was. But it's likely that he was a mighty hunter in that he was a hunter of people, a hunter of humans, a man hunter. So not really the best of things to be, right? I mean, not good. And also, it kind of almost emphasizes it as almost like a pride thing, that he was just grandiose, as we'll see later on. Genesis 10:10. The beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Klenai, in the land of Shinar, in Babylonia. Genesis 10:11. Out of the land he, Nimrod, went forth into Assyria, and bore Nineveh, Rehoboth, Klahach. Genesis 10:12. And Rezin, which is between Nineveh and Klahad. All these suburbs combined to form the great city. So those are little districts, right? They're kind of like the suburbs kind of coming together to make the big city. Genesis 10:13. And Egypt, Mizraim, became the father of Ludium, Ammonium, Labahim, Nephituim. Okay. Genesis 10:14. Paphirism, Calusium, from whom is the Philistines, and Caphtorium, something like that. Genesis 10:15. Canaan became the father of Sidon, his firstborn. Heth, the Hittites, Heth of the Hittites. Okay. We hear about the Hittites a little later on. They're kind of one of those significant names. Oh man. Genesis 10:16. The Jebusites, the Amorites, and the Gargishites, Genesis 10:17. The Hivites, the Archasites, and the Sinites. Okay. Genesis 10:18. The Arvitite, the Zamorites and the Hamathites, afterwards, the families of the Canaanites spread abroad. Okay, there we go. We got stuff going on here. I am totally lost, but hopefully I'll be found. Genesis 10:19. And the territory of the Canaanites extended from Shidon as one goes to the Geher as far as Gaza, and as one goes to Sodom and Gomorrah, Adamiah and Zeboim, as far as Lasha. Okay, so that's a territory. Oh, and of course, I'm sure viewers of this journey, if they've survived to this juncture in time, due to my inability to read, will recognize the name Sodom and Gomorrah. That comes up a little bit later. Not far from now. Long from now? Not long from now. Not far in pages. Genesis 10:20. These are the sons of Ham by their families, their language, their lands, their nations. So a lot of the time it's like we got the land, we got the language, and we got the nations, right? They're all kind of come from the name. It's like I'm trying to think of a modern day example. I guess the people that speak English, are from England, the nation, right? So you got the nation, you got the land. Although it's usually like Great Britain or whatever. Well, let's just call the land England. So we got England, the land. You got the English language, and Great Britain, So they all kind of tie in that way. And a lot of the times with languages, that's kind of what we do. Japan, the Japanese language, right? Japanese, I guess we would just call the language of Japan, even though that's we call it in our language is different than what they call it in their own language, right? But a lot of times that's just kind of how things work, is that we name the place, the language, and the people after the name. And then in this case, they're naming it after the person who's like the first settler, right? So we got Ham and his boy, or whatever, or son and their family, or whatever. They go settle somewhere, and then we would refer to it by the name of his son or whatever. That is like his territory, and they're speaking his language. Although we don't get the language split yet. That comes a little bit later, and I think some of this is like the ordering. Like we have the language split, which comes not too far from now, and then we have these territories, and I think some of it is this is after what happens a little bit later, because it's not necessarily in linear chronological order, right? So we have the splitting of languages, and then we have all these different places or whatever, but it makes sense to split off the languages and the places here in the genealogy before we get to the Tower of Babel. Oh man, that's an exciting event. So that's just kind of how it goes. That's your historical background as to why some of these things are kind of the way that they are. Yeah, it's good. Genesis 10:21. To Shem also, the younger brother of Japheth, and the ancestor of all the children of Eber, including the Hebrews. Children were born. Okay, Eber, Hebrew. It's interesting. A lot of times too, it's like as far as like languages and countries and country names and language names and people's names, it's like a lot of the time it's like you get a new generation and it's almost like a little bit of a twist on the previous one. And so that's how a lot of these things kind of go down the generations, right? That over hundreds or thousands of years, that the different people, it's like the name has just kind of been mutated when it gets translated into different languages back and forth, and then that's kind of how that goes about. So we're kind of seeing the precursor to that with Eber and the Hebrews, right? Maybe there is some sort of connection between the names. I mean, the name Eber is it's in Hebrew, so I don't know. We'll see later. Something to look forward to, something to get excited for. If you're into that style of history. I mean, not everybody is, but when it comes to like studying history and understanding places and things and events or whatever, that understanding the historical context of a name and how they might change over time really gives a deeper level of insight into the people. Yeah, yeah. Not really going anywhere with that. Genesis 10:22. The sons of Shem, Elam, Ashar, Apashed, Lud, and Aram. Aram, that's an interesting name. Genesis 10:23. The sons of Aram, Uz, Hul, Gether, and Mash. They definitely had a diversity of language and speaking when they came to naming their children at this juncture of time. Because it seems like every single one of the children has a very distinct line of children's names. And it's done in such a way that they can't really be mixed up and confused. Not similar names. Not like people that have like 3 kids and name them all very similar names one to another, so it confuses everybody. Just for fun. These names are very distinct, they're very different, and they're kind of laid out in such a way that it makes it easier to follow, because these names, these people, they become civilizations, they become cultures unto themselves. They are cities, they are nations, they are groups of people, and they travel forth and colonize the new world, or the world in the I guess literal sense, because it's barren, nothing there, right? So these guys got to recolonize the planet. Did we do 24? After Apphashezd became the father of Shelah, and Shelah became the father of Eber. Yeah, we did. Did we do that? I don't know. Maybe we did. Genesis 10:25. To Eber were born 2 sons. The name of one was Peleg, because the earth was divided in those days, and his brother's name was Joktan. Joktan and Peleg. Good old boys of the olden era. Genesis 10:26. Joktan became the father of Almodad, Shelepha, Hazarmatev, and Jerah. Okay. 10:27. Hadoram, Uzal, Dikla. Solid names there. Not much commentary. Genesis 10:28. Obal, Abimel, Sheba. Okay. 10:29. Ophir, Halaha, and Jobab. All of these were the sons of Joktan. Okay. Joktan, you got a good family there. Genesis 10:30. The territory in which they live extended from Mesha, as one goes towards Sephar, to the hill country of the east. That's very good. Genesis 10:31. These are Shem's descendants by their family, their language, their land, their nations. Genesis 10:32. There are the families of the sons of Noah. Or these are the families of the sons of Noah, according to their generation, within their nations, from these nations spread abroad after the earth. There we go. So there we go. This is the group of people. And this doesn't name all the kids that all these people had. This is just kind of like their line, and the ones that kind of became significant places or cities or whatever, right? There would have been other people that would have had to have gone to these to make the cities, to make the groupings of people. So, a lot going on. And I mean, the world's very barren at this time, so, what do we got here? A couple dozen? Maybe a couple hundred? They all spread out, they're all having kids. I don't know what the kids of MASH are up to, but they definitely filled up their city, right? So a lot of this is just kind of setting up the locations for later on. And that is Genesis 10. Wow. What an experience.